Thank you for tuning in to Planting Seeds Philanthropy in Saskatchewan, a podcast where we aim to connect you to the community impact that is empowered by donors and charities across the prairies. I'm your host, Victor Roman, from the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. I hope you enjoyed the listen. So today I'm joined by Donna Ziegler. Donna is the Executive Director of South Saskatchewan Community Foundation, and she's been there since 2018. Donna holds a Master of Communications from Royal Roads University, has worked in the charitable and nonprofit sectors for many years, and had served as an elected school board member for nearly 2 decades. She's also had memberships with the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, International Association of Business Communicators, and the International Coach Federation. All right, welcome, Donna. It's good to have you today.
Thanks, Victor, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I gave kind of your website bio of what we have for you. Is there anything you'd want to kind of elaborate further on I guess your background with philanthropy, or perhaps what brought you to South Saskatchewan Community Foundation?
Sure. So I think, innately, I am an advocate for change. And even as a young kid, on the school representative council or, on the home and school association for my children, and then with the school board. And then I worked for charities and advocated for change, advocated for prevention of disease. And so I think it really led me to want to give back more and want to do more and have, potentially impact on some of the larger issues, the more complex issues that society is faced with. I love the fact that the Community Foundation works with business leaders, works with community leaders, works with donors and charities, and hopefully together we try to mitigate some of the challenges that people have and improve the well-being within a community. So it really drew everything within me to come and work for an organization that is really trying to mobilize change right here where I lived locally. So yeah, no, it's pretty exciting and a pretty awesome organization.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We're biased because we both work for it, but but I think one thing that we can say is, we both chose to work for it. It wasn't just a role that, it's not a role you just wake up one day and accidentally end up in. It's something you very intentionally come towards. So, and you come from the charitable sector, so you already have experience before you end up here. So it is really. I mean, the work that SSCF does is important, and it's really easy to see that, I think, from the outside when you're looking in, and from the inside, it's exciting because you get to be part of that change directly. And I guess one thing I'm wondering is, as far as SSCF goes, um, what do you see as kind of the future of change? You just explained a bit of what our purpose is. How do you see that growing over time? What do you see being important in our community?
So I think so. Lots packed in there, but I really think that helping community improve the well-being of the residents who live within that community. We at South Saskatchewan we work with a larger geographical area, right? Davidson down, east to west of both borders. Um, you know, 472 communities, over 480,000 individuals. So we really try to support local charities that are helping individuals, frontline folks that are out there helping individuals who are marginalized or who are having a setback or require programs and services. And it really pulls at the heartstrings. And so, you know, I want to ensure that communities have access to resources today, but in the future. Communities are not going anywhere. They're just getting bigger and stronger. And population is growing in different communities. You want to see those communities thrive in the future. So making
Hmm.
sure that
Hmm.
there's resources there that they can access. You know, we we did a survey, or we did a survey for our vital signs report this year. It really wasn't a report; it was an overview, a recap, asking our organizations how they felt after COVID and what was important to them. One of the key pieces for these charities, frontline charities that are doing the good work, is around long-term stable funding. And if you think about communities, Regina or Moose Jaw or Oxbow or wherever, they're going to be here for a long time. They need to ensure that they have access, or we need to try and ensure that they have access to resources for the next generation. And so, I think I look to the future. There's so much change happening in the world today, right? Nobody ever expected a pandemic. And nobody, there's lots of uh, different activities and initiatives that are impacting our our thinking, our thoughts, and so helping some of those groups um, gain their legs, gain their feet, so that they can mobilize and make a difference in southern Saskatchewan. That's why we're here, right? To try and help for the next generation as well. We help today, but also for the next generation. We believe in, um, in the long haul, the long game, and trying to ensure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
funds are here for that.
I think, and I mean, kind of internally, this is our day to day. So we talk about endowed funds all the time, and that long term stable support. Um, and yeah, the pandemic is something that I think really brought it front and center for many people, definitely for charities that maybe didn't have stable funding at the time, but also for donors to realize just how fragile our community really is without that support ongoing. And the pandemic was a time where fundraisers were being canceled, having to be reimagined. You weren't really sure how much money people were going to be giving or not giving, or where they were going to be giving it to. So, from a charity perspective, it was definitely challenging. And I think from a donor perspective, it really changes potentially how you want to give, because you look at your community a little bit differently. And when it comes to the long term giving, the endowed giving, do you want to maybe explain a little bit to our listeners kind of how that works, and I guess how to make the biggest impact with your donation over a long period of time?
Yeah, so long-term giving or endowed giving, that's our business really, is to be here for the next generation and to provide resources for the next generation to have access to, so they can improve the well-being where they live. So we really pool investments. We pool donors' generosity, generous donors, we pool their donations and we invest them with the rest of the funds that we have and get a good return and return the income back to the donor or to the fund, and a percentage goes back into community according to what the donor wants or where the donor's interests lie. That allows donors to have the most impact. If you can do it in perpetuity, over a long period of time, and continue to give back to your charities, you can do it. You can do it today, and it doesn't have to be long term. And you can still have impact with those charities. Often, a community foundation knows about other opportunities because we collaborate and we convene. We're known as conveners, bringing partners together, working on issues together so that we can have the most impact. That might be matching grants. That might be federal programming that's going to match funds. And so we're well aware of when that's going to happen. And we reach back out to donors and say, this is an opportunity to match funds. You can double your impact. So we're always thinking about having the most impact with the donations that are given to the foundation for the donor's sake, so they know that they can double their impact, and for the community's sake, because they get double the resources. So we're always looking to have the most impact. And it's pooling those investments that allows the long term to continue. Once you can secure those investments, you can, and we have a very strong oversight on the investments by our board, by third party financial managers. So we ensure that we're in it for the long game.
Absolutely. One thing I wanted to ask a bit about, because we have that long-term stable option. It really is when you're a donor. I mean, to me, it's an easy sell. If I'm going to give $100 and it's going to help tomorrow, or if I'm going to give $100 and in 50 years it's still going to be giving, it's kind of a no-brainer from the long term. It's like, well, I probably want to give, so it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. Even just as like whether it's a small donation for me, like if I give to a fund or if someone is creating a fund with more significant dollar amounts. But one question I have is when there is that emergent need, when something happens now, uh, how does SSCF respond? And I'm saying this in a way like I know because when I was at Big Brothers Big Sisters before my role here, there was emergent needs at the beginning of the pandemic, and I felt that response. But maybe you want to elaborate. Like, I think COVID-19 hitting is a perfect time. When that happened, how did SSCF make sure that you could also reach people now when you need it now beyond just the endowed funds?
Yeah, that's a great introduction kind of to talking about how that came about. The Community Foundation really looks to donors and to community members to see how they would like to leave their legacy. And we have those conversations with people. And we are fortunate enough to have a number of donors leave us in their will and provide us with some estate money that is discretionary to the Community Foundation. So we see a need in community and we are able to respond immediately. So the board, South Saskatchewan board, decided we had some discretionary funding. 500,000 was going to be put up, and as long as there was matched funds by donors, community members, we would be able to double that impact back into community. I was I was really taken aback by the number of donors that stepped forward immediately. As you know, sometimes government funding can take a long time to come. And we have the pulse of the community and the pulse of the charities. We connect with them regularly. When the pandemic hit, we were calling them to see how they were continuing services. How are they doing? How was their mental health? And they were stressed, very stressed. And so with the Community Foundation, we are able to mobilize that money, double the impact. Donors stepped up right away. And we were able to give back 1.2 million to South Saskatchewan charities within 4 weeks. What we know now is that 67% of charities in South Saskatchewan that we know of had to close their doors once the pandemic struck. They were no longer intaking individuals. They pivoted, they turned around quickly and moved to online. That was enabled or allowed or supported because we were able to get some funding back into community. They were able to get the online platforms ready to go. That emergency response fund for community need is just it's really the heart of what a community foundation can do. When you hear people in need, their stories of the thank yous, I just wanted to share a couple of examples. The Canadian Mental Health Association in Swift Current delivered 4,000 meals, drive-by meals, drove by and dropped them off, had conversations with people who were struggling. 4,000 meals within a month or two. The Coppell volunteer fire department. They were out, they received some money from us. They were out handing out coloring books. They were dropping off food to seniors. They were dropping off toys because people weren't allowed to leave their house. There's so many examples of, and I think of even Big Brothers, Big Sisters, they had to move online right away, right? So they were still connecting people. As a previous big sister, I know from my little sister that would have meant the world, that somebody was still connecting with me and still able to connect with me, even though we couldn't go out together. We could still connect online. There are a number of stories that people and charities went over and above their way to have impact with those, their residents, their clients, and just to make sure that they were okay.
Absolutely. I even want to build off of that a little bit because I don't know if the listeners know my background either, but I joined SSCF from Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I was the executive director for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Regina and area when the pandemic hit. And I'll tell you what you just said, but from our perspective was, it was mid-March. We were prepping for a fundraiser, and then after that, thinking about our big fall fundraiser. Then the pandemic hit. Our fundraiser got canceled. The whole world changed. We had no idea what anything was looking like. And from a leadership role for that organization, I was also obviously looking at our funding as every nonprofit was, thinking without these fundraisers, what are we going to do? And just, everything was a rush. We moved online in the span of 4 days, tried to figure it out for months. But that financial kind of looming, like, how do we do this? Are we going to, like, how far can we make it with this? Really came to ease because of SSCF, and we applied for that emergency response fund that was activated so quickly. And I very vividly recall the day that I got the email saying we got that funding, because I literally just like sat my chair shaking because for me that meant, okay, we can do this. We can focus on our operations. And because we weren't, so even just our heads could get out of the game of how do we financially keep on top of things, then we were really able to focus on, okay, how do we make virtual mentoring strong? How do we grow this? How do we make sure that the kids need what they need? And what that let us focus more on was, we realized right away kids didn't have the technology they needed. There was a lack of laptops, for example, because suddenly you've got all these kids trying to do mentoring and schooling, which was a big thing, but you might only have one computer at home and there might be four kids. So we were able to really drive a community effort to then get a bunch of laptop and tablet donations that would connect kids to their schools and to their mentors, that we got for everyone that needed in the program and beyond. And the only reason why something like that was honestly even possible is because we weren't worrying about the funding at a time that was so uncertain. It gave us the ability to continue on operations and make the impact that community needed. And I know from my role at SSCF, I've talked to many charities about how the funds impacted them, and it's very much stories like that. It's very much it was a relief. It lifted so much anxiety, and it let operations run so much stronger at a time that our community needed those operations to run stronger than ever. So
Yeah, you know
so it
what,
really
Vic?
is, I think, a testament to the advantages of that long-term stable funding, but also having the flexibility to address that emergent need.
That's what I was going to say, Victor. I think that it really it brought to light our values. It really did. People trusted us. Donors trusted us. We were collaborative with partnerships. We were flexible. We were responsive, immediately responsive, and we were compassionate about what we were doing and helping, right? The benevolent component of it. So it really brought to light all of our values at a community foundation. Those values go beyond a community foundation. Those are values that I'm sure you hold and I hold. And so it's a really, that's a really good example of what a community foundation can do to help during a pandemic today, but who knows what the next challenge is going to be in the future. And so having that discretionary funding when people, want to give back, they're not sure where to give back or how to start or what to give back to, discretionary funding, unrestricted funding is critical in times like a pandemic, And in times when a community foundation like ours too, we also do our own research, our community research, right? Our vital signs, we do surveys, we talk to charities. In the pandemic year, right, we gave back $10.4 million, and we gave it back to over 400 different organizations or charities. So we have that connection to the community. We understand the needs, and with discretionary funding, we're able to make some of those, kind of help with some of those bigger, complex, more challenging times and issues that continue, or that are continuing.
I just want to touch a little bit more on the research we do, because that's one thing I think, from a donor's perspective, as you mentioned, there is trust built, and that trust doesn't come out of anywhere. That trust comes from hard work and relationships and long term work. And if I was a donor and I'm looking to give money, and I come to you and you tell me part of this should be non discretionary and we'll choose, how how would me, like someone that doesn't know anything about the foundation, how am I supposed to look at that and say, okay, well, why should I trust you? How do I know you know the best way to use this funding? What would you say to them, or how would you explain what we do to them?
Yeah, so we know the pulse of the community. We do several, we're connected to charities and throughout South Saskatchewan, and we've had to work very close with them, especially during the pandemic. But we care about them, so we constantly connect with them. We have our Vital Signs Community Network that has, over 75 to 100 members that connects 4 times a year, for sure 4 times a year, if not more, because we also offer um, toolkit series with the University of Regina to ensure that nonprofits, charities have access to some professional development. So we connect with them regularly. We do charity surveys every year and get feedback on what's working, what's not working, what's their biggest issue, how did COVID impact them. We are well connected. Now, the vital signs report we only do every few years, but we have conversations. In 2019, we had 50 vital community conversations. We actually had more. We had 56 with 48 organizations. So we're well connected to the community to understand what the needs are. We also talk to community leaders, right? Other mayors, other individuals from larger charities, or that are, and other researchers that are also in this. We stay connected so that we know what the pulse of the community is, where the need is, what are the issues. And so, yeah, we do our own research to make sure that we're connected to the charitable sector and to the nonprofit sector, and to other agencies that are important or critical to ensuring the well-being of the community.
Absolutely. Another thing I think that's really unique about a community foundation too is being part of Community Foundations of Canada. It just gives you such a wide national network to really build on that as well. So it is, yeah, again, that trust doesn't come as a given, and it's clear there's a really long list of things that are always happening to make sure we really do understand the community here, and that it's not just based on the people in the room. That it's all documented, it's all a process, it's all something that's going to live on really beyond. I mean, it needs to live on forever, so it needs to live on beyond just the employees that are in the office too. um, we're going to wrap it up here pretty quick. I'm just curious, do you have any noteworthy kind of stories since you've been with SSCF that have really resonated with you regarding kind of a donor's impact on community?
So there's a couple, Victor, that I'd like to just share. One is the Saros Kowalski, uh, his estate that he left to the Community Foundation. He started with us in 2007 about, and just started looking into what that might look like for him. He was an individual that was a professor. He didn't have a large family. He wanted to make an impact right in community. So he left um, resources in his will to be donated to his fund here at the Community Foundation. And so with his estate, he was able to leave over $1 million to his small animal fund. You know, the generosity of that for small animals will have impact for years to come on the, you know, the organizations that serve small animals. And so I think that is a big one for me. And you know, most people think about causes as illnesses, or if they're, or education, or but that was very different. Small Animal Fund, right? That's a different area. And he was very close to gerbil and small dogs, and so he wanted to make sure that the humane societies of Saskatchewan would be well taken care of and supported for long-term unrestricted funding, which is critical. The other one I want to mention is the Gary Highland story. Gary was a high school teacher in Moose Jaw, and he really loved the arts. He was an advocate for the arts, and he started a literary scholarship fund for young writers, emerging writers, so that they could attend a retreat in the summertime through Sage Hill Writing School. That's another one that I really love. Not a lot of money to start it, but it continues to grow over time. It just started giving that scholarship back in the last 3 years. And the people that are receiving that are so grateful. And but the other one with Gary then developed ALS, and so he wanted to give back to the ALS charity here in Saskatchewan. Again, not a lot of money, but it's critical. It gives equipment to people who are gives money for equipment for people who are diagnosed with ALS. And you know, when I can't even imagine, but it would be you know, um, it would be detrimental hearing the news, and then knowing that there's going to be all these expenses on top of it, so that you can walk, so that you can, you know, get from A to B, or the different lifts that you might need. And so Gary Highland started that ALS fund, and I have read letters of people just being so grateful for the amount that they receive to be able to purchase the equipment they require. I love those ones. There are so many stories. There are so many stories. The food banks, right? Matching dollars from the G. Murray and Edna Fords, being able to match that. Anonymous donors coming forward to help with, you know, a broken furnace, or missing bottles from a bottle drive, or just so many good individuals out there, and businesses, right? We have businesses that also have funds here that give back to communities that they serve. I think people want to give back right where they live, where they started their business, where they raise their family, and they want to help their community. And that's the nice thing about a community foundation. You can help your community, you can help a cause, you can leave a legacy, you can honor somebody as a memorial fund, you can give a scholarship or a bursary, or there's all kinds of ways that you can continue to give back today, or you can give it back in perpetuity should you so wish. So I think there's just so many. I think of, sorry, and I could go on and on. I think of the Bill and Helen Davidson Fund in Weyburn. Over the years that it's been established, it's given back over $1 million to the area of Weyburn. You know, they were able to buy a van that helps with rehabilitation through the Canadian Mental Health Association in Weyburn. Right? There's so many great stories. It just it's enlightening. It makes me get up every morning and want to come to work and just see what other good things we can collaborate on, how much more we can give back, how we can have more impact with donors' generosity, and understanding communities and working with them to address some of these bigger, more complex issues, along with the regular programming, the milk program or the literacy program, the books that they need in a school. There's just such a wide variety here. And I love, we are local, right? We're local. We help you. We're local. We're a bit of a boutique because we are local, and our board members are local. Our staff is local, and we understand the community because we are local.
I think one thing that's really important, well, one thing, many things, is that, when you're going through that, it's like, how much money do I need to start a fund? It can be small, it can be big, the impact, no matter what's going to grow, what you can cover. There's really so many topics, like you said, from small animals to helping out with fixing a furnace to helping out with capital campaigns, things like that. Like, and then where you can give, well, are you from Weyburn? Give in Weyburn. Are you from Arcola? Give in Arcola. Maybe you want to give in Moose Jaw and Regina. I think there's kind of two parts to that. One is that it can be almost intimidating, the amount of option when you just think about it like that. But what I would tell a potential donor is, what you can be assured is we're really flexible. There's tons of options, and what you need, there's a very high chance that we're going to be able to make it work for you, especially if it's, sometimes it's as simple as someone wants to give to one organization. That's really simple. But if someone says, okay, well, I care about youth, and there's 5 organizations that deal with that, it's nice because everything can be organized in one spot. You don't have to go everywhere else, and all those complicated facets become really simple because you're only dealing with one source opposed to having to go to so many. So when you said that, that's what really resonated with me. It's like it is incredible just how much you can do through an organization like this, and it's like it's that one-stop shop to do it all, which is, I think, a big sell for probably for a lot of donors that deal with us, that they have that one place to support so many different charities. And the very last thing, just because you talked a bit about Saros Kawasji and his will, and I know one thing, we're part of the willpower movement. So one thing that's always apparent to me is that there's not that many people, it's not a social norm yet to give in your will. And I think part of that is, well, I think we know part of that is that people either think that if they do that, it means they're not going to give to their families. But there's so many ways that you can actually give to both. So I think maybe my closing remarks would just be for donors listening or potential donors listening to know that, when you're thinking about what you're leaving behind, community is also something that does impact family. It's something that, the money going directly to your grandchildren is also going to be positively impacted by the programs that you're supporting that they might use later or that their peers are going to use. It's going to create a better community for them to grow up in. And I think that's one thing that someone like Saros would understand with that whole idea that, there is a huge important aspect of animals. And it's not like his entire will went to animals. That was a portion of it. You're able to do so much with that. And I really hope that, stories like his and stories like this help inspire others to realize there's so many ways to give, and a will is a really good way to do it as well.
I would agree, Victor.
That pretty much brings us to the end of the time here. I just want to thank you for talking about this. I do think that, I think it helps when we have a conversation like this to help people maybe visualize what that whole process is of working with the community foundation. And I really hope that our audience resonates with that. I know one of the challenges I have from a communication standpoint is you always want to say so much in such little amount of time. And I think we were able to say a lot in this half hour. So thanks a lot for that, Donna.
Thanks so much, Victor. It has been a pleasure. I love the foundation. I love what they do, and it's easy to talk about it. And, it's a tool for philanthropists, and it's a resource for charities. So thank you.
Thank you for listening today. If you'd like to learn more, visit South Saskatchewan Community Foundation at sscf.ca or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Just search South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. And of course, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're tuning in from.